between. So I invite you to find a nice seat. You could be in an easy seat or in hero's pose. You could sit on a chair, you could sit on a couch, whatever you want to do. And then wherever you are, make a decision about how you want to place your eyelids, whether you might want to close the eyes altogether, or if you want to have the eyelids at half mast, finding a sweet gazing point in front of you on the floor. And then invite your body to release into this moment. Maybe making very conscious contact with the earth underneath you, really noticing where the earth meets the body and where the body meets the earth. Sensing maybe into your sits bones, maybe your thighs, maybe certain aspects of your lower legs, maybe your feet. And let yourself fully dive into that connection. And as your body meets the earth here, you might notice that the earth meets the body back. There's a certain rebound effect that happens when you really ground into the earth. And so use that conversation with the earth and the response from the earth to draw up through the spine, to create more space, however tiny, between your vertebrae, to give some decompression to your discs. They should be nice and juicy at this point if you had a good sleep. But they'll still appreciate any lengthening in the spine that you can create here as you maybe visualize drawing the crown of the head toward the sky. And as you create this grounding and expansion, let yourself sense into the stability that the body just naturally creates. There's really nothing you have to do. Your muscles and bones and ligaments and tendons and fascia and even your organs arrange themselves naturally to support a stable seat. From here, draw your attention to your breath. And invite your breath as well to ground, to connect to the world around you. Maybe you notice very consciously for a few breaths how you take in air, drawing in the world, and then how you breathe out air, returning something to your world. This connects you through the breath to your environment, to your relationships, to other people. And in that sense is very grounding. For a moment, you also might choose to focus your attention, especially on the exhalation, perhaps feeling how the exhalation grounds not just the breath, but your body and maybe even your nervous system. Let yourself feel that connection. That softening or deepening. And then notice that just as you had that conversation between body and earth and there was a rebound, there's a rebound in the breath too. So from the grounding of the exhalation arises the expansion of the inhalation. And so for a few breaths, you might attend very particularly to the expansiveness that comes in as you inhale. Feeling the inhalation, perhaps lifting the body, lifting your energy, lifting your spirits, lifting your mind. And then you might notice that in this play of grounding and expanding, your breath has stabilized. There was nothing much you had to do to equalize the breath or stabilize the breath. It happened. All it took was consciousness of the breath, mindfulness of the breath. Maybe tinged with a sense of appreciation or gratitude for the breath. Invite yourself to absorb this sense of stability in your body and in your breath into every fiber of your being. Trust that your body has this amazing capacity to stabilize, to find its own middle way, to find its center. That capacity is inherent in all of us. Stability in body, stability in breath, ultimately stability in mind. Much of this happens through attention and through cultivating trust in your own resilience. Take 2 to 4 more rounds of breath with an open heart and without expectations. And then making your own choice about where to place the hands, I invite you to bow your head to heart center. To attend to your capacity to ground, to expand and grow spacious, and to find stability, a place where there is stillness and movement in stillness. And from that sattvic place, you might choose to invite an intention for your time in class today and for the remainder of the weekend. If an intention arose for you that seems auspicious, I invite you to breathe it into your heart with your next inhalation. And then to share it out into the world with your next exhalation. And then release your hands if they were lifted, open your eyes, or bring the eyelids to fully open if they were lowered, and lift your focus. And see if you need to change up your seat. Maybe if you had a cross in your legs, you want to switch it. Or if you chose a seat that doesn't feel auspicious anymore, find a new way of sitting. we're going to sit for a little bit. You know, I didn't tell you what props we would need, so I'll just do that along the way, and it might be a little scrambly, but we'll cope. So go ahead and start by bringing your left foot into a place where you can actually reach it. Something's happening. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, I just spotlighted your video.
Oh, okay. All right. Sometimes for some people, it's really helpful to have their foot on a block, and so you could consider that, or if you have a bolster or a blanket. Just depending sort of on the mobility in the joints. And for some people, it's helpful to have the opposite leg straight. There are all kinds of ways that you could prop a person's foot here, so you could get really creative, you know, and really build a little platform. For some people, maybe the foot has to be further out. So you kind of have to experiment with what works. And help your students when you ask your students to do this. And we'll start by giving our plantar fascia a little bit of a massage. The plantar fascia is the fascia in the bottom of the foot. And maybe start in the medial arch, which is the most obvious arch in the foot. Start the massage there. And notice as you're massaging through there, if there are any tight spots that you're noticing with your fingers, and that you can feel in your foot maybe as a little bit of a pressure pain, or maybe a lot as a pressure pain, and just have some curiosity about what meets you there. And you'll notice as you look at the bottom of your foot, if that's accessible to you to see, that you have some pretty soft skin in the medial arch, even if you're like a regular barefoot walker. There's no callus in your medial arch because that arch really rarely meets the earth. And so there's no need for the foot to develop callus there. As you move a little bit more lateral to the lateral arch, the arch that's on the outside of the foot, just across from the medial arch, you might feel a little bit of thickening of the skin. It gives you an idea that the lateral arch does make some contact with the ground, even though it is an arch. That lateral arch is actually your strongest one. And so give it a nice rub and notice that it's a lot less sensitive, at least it is for me, than the medial arch. And then if you'd like, you could bring your massage to the heel, and on the heel you might notice a certain roughness in your skin and a definite thickening into a callus, especially if you are a barefoot walker. And then notice if you can palpate any bone here, or if you have a soft cushion that meets your fingers, and just notice that with some curiosity. This is a pretty substantial fat pad that you have in your heel, and so just give that a little bit of a rub. It's not going to have much of an effect. It's more for your fingers to palpate that. And then move to the balls of the feet and give a little rub there, and maybe some visual too, and just notice where you have calluses across the balls of your feet. There's actually a transverse arch here. It's called the distal transverse arch. And if that arch is working, you barely have any callus from the second, third, and fourth toe, and you have a more pronounced callusing under the first and fifth toe. And so just notice, and also notice what it feels like to massage the various places here. Great. And then we will take the foot and we'll put it on the ground or on a prop so that you can still reach it. And then take your fingers to the top of your foot and massage a little bit between like if you move your toes a little bit, you'll see little lines on your feet. Those are your metatarsals. And you'll see that there are grooves in between. For your massage in between those grooves. That could be really sensitive. And so just slide your fingers through those grooves to the best of your ability. You might notice that there's some divisions in between the metatarsals that are wider than others. And that's purposeful on the part of your construction in terms of creating balance in the foot. And then look at your foot as you're continuing to massage between the metatarsals. And just notice if you can also see the fourth arch in your foot here, which is your proximal transverse arch, which runs across the foot at the level of some of the tarsals, 4 of your 7 tarsals. And just notice that that transverse arch happens just because of the way the bones are shaped right there. And then move your curiosity to the other foot. So whatever arrangement you had on one side may not be the arrangement you need on the other side. That depends on your hip and knee flexibility. And so don't make any assumptions about what will or won't work for you. And then find the bottom of your other foot and begin the same massage here, starting again with the medial arch, which is the inside arch, the thing that we usually call the arch of the foot, as if it were the only one. And the arch where people often are concerned about how high or low it is, which isn't actually the most important thing about this arch. And just massage through there and notice if there are any spots that seem tighter. And now that you've massaged the top of the foot on the other side, notice if you can feel those metatarsals that you could see when you were massaging the top under your fingers here as you're massaging from the bottom. You can't see those from the bottom, but you can kind of feel them possibly under your fingers, which then gives you a direction in which to massage. And then slowly move that massage outward toward the lateral arch. Maybe noticing that the skin thickens a little bit and noticing whether it's different on this foot than the other foot, because we don't necessarily walk in perfect balance side to side. And the massage and your visual inspection of the foot will give you some information about that. And just appreciate how strong that lateral arch is. It is almost indestructible. It doesn't collapse. So it's very firm. And then move your massage to the heel. And again, notice that there's not a whole lot of sensation under your feet. That's intentional. Or under your fingers, I should say. This fat pad is like, I think almost a ½ inch thick. And so there's really never contact of bone with the ground through your foot. So when we tell our yoga students to ground their heels, they're actually grounding the fat pad, not grounding the calcaneus, which is the heel bone. And then move toward the balls of the feet, finding your distal transverse arch, and just noticing if there's a difference side to side, like how much callousing is there by the second, third, and fourth toe as compared to your other foot, and how much callousing is there at the first and fifth. And what does that tell you about how much of a distal transverse arch you have? A lot of people have absolutely no distal transverse arch. that arch is non-existent. And so then you would have pretty much the same amount of callousing all the way across all the balls of the feet. And so just notice what you're finding there. And then when you are ready, you can plant the foot on the ground and move your toes around so that you can see the metatarsals of the other foot. And then start massaging the grooves between the metatarsals. This is a spot in the foot where toxins tend to accumulate in the fascia because there's not as much movement here. And so this massage between the metatarsals of the foot is really, really good for your foot. You might also need a little bit of sensitivity. And so, you know, use your discernment about how deeply to massage or rub or give movement here. Great. And then you can go ahead and let go of that massaging movement. From here, I invite you to find some kind of support for your leg, and we'll actually switch to the left side. Again, you can get really creative. You can give people supports under the feet like this. So building a little wall where they can rest the foot. Or if you would like, or if your students prefer, you can just hold onto the foot with your arms, embracing it. And we're going to take some ankle circles. We're tempted to call this circumducting the ankle, but there is not a single joint involved here. There are two joints involved. And we'll talk about that more later, but it's kind of nice to know that there are two major joints in the ankle, sort of stacked on top of each other. Sub and supratalar joints. The one on top lets you do this, so go ahead and do that with me. This is called dorsi and plantar flexion. We've been through this. So that's the top part of the ankle joint that's doing that. And then the bottom part, and now you can do this with me, you can pronate the foot and supinate the foot. So you turn the foot in and you turn the foot out. You can also do this standing on the foot, and then you move the leg bones across the foot. And when you combine these two movements, you get a circle. And so now go to the other direction than what you started with. And as you do this, you might also notice how the movement reverberates up your calf. And then go ahead and release that foot down and switch sides. And again, you might not be the same side to side. Your students might not be the same side to side. And so how you set up on this side may be different from the other side. And then start by making circles in one direction. And then let those circles stop and go ahead and flex the foot, dorsiflexing the toes toward the knee or plantar flexing the toes toward the ground. Knowing now that this is your supratalar joint, the joint between the talus and the tibia, that's making this movement. And then pronate and supinate the foot, so turn it side to side. It's also called inversion and eversion. And after you've done that a few times, then make circles again, this time in the other direction than what you started with. And hopefully you remembered whether you started clockwise or counterclockwise. I didn't cue that for you. So test your memory here. It's no great harm if you do them in the same direction both times. And then just notice that movement into the calf muscles. And then let that movement come to an end. Plant your feet in front of you. And if you can see them, take a look at them and watch what happens if you flex your toes up. And then watch what happens when you press the toes into the ground. And do that one more time, seated. And press down. Great. Now we'll come to standing. If you noticed that you didn't have much of a callus on the second, third, and fourth ball of your toes, then you actually have a distal transverse arch. Sorry guys, I need to check on what just happened in my house. That was not a good thing unless we had an earthquake or something. Okay, I'll see if my husband takes care of it. All right, so let's track a little bit here. So from here, if you have an arch, you might see it and you might feel it. You might feel that the first and fifth ball of your foot actually are more grounded here than the balls of the toes in the center. If you have a flat arch here, then start really digging the toes into the earth. You have prehensile toes, by the way. They have a little hinge joint in the phalanges, between the phalanges of your joint. And so that's what you're working right now. And if you have a strap handy or a little towel or a TheraBand, throw that out in front of you. You could do this seated too, by the way, if you have clients who would rather do this seated, or students. And then use your toes, I don't know if you can see this, to pull the strap farther and farther back. This is a great movement for the foot in general, strengthens all kinds of muscles in the feet, but it's also a wonderful way of working on developing a distal transverse arch. And if you have a nice long strap and you do the whole strap every day, you'll definitely develop a lot of strength here. I'm halfway through mine. I think I'll switch sides and I'll invite you to do the same. Just so we're not here all day. We could be here all day with foot yoga, but might not be the best use of our time. And so just keep gripping with your little prehensile toes, strengthening all the little muscles. There are about 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments in your feet. So there's a lot going on here. And there are 33 joints in the feet, not counting the joints in the ankle. And I have pretty much arrived at the end of my strap. So that is where I will stop. If you have marbles or other little doohickeys, the next thing you could do here is to have a pile of marbles in front of you and then to use your toes to pick up one marble at a time and just move it over a foot. And so you could just pretend that you're doing that a couple of times on each side to get the sense of what this does to your toes. It sort of curls and you can really feel that distal arch when you do this movement, and then switch sides and just pretend that you're picking up a marble and then you're carrying it a foot over and then you're releasing it. And you really feel the toes engage and you feel that little distal arch forming, even if you didn't have much of one. Just pick up a couple more imaginary marbles. Great that you can do it even without the actual prop, right? and move them over. And then just take a moment to shake out the ankle joints. Great. All right, from here, grab a couple of blocks and find a wall. And if you have firm blocks, use your firmer blocks. Like I have different kinds of blocks, and my really purple ones are too squishy for that, but these are a little harder. So just find the hardest block you have. And then we're using the wall only for balance. You could do this standing in the middle of the room. It's up to you. And then step the front of the foot onto the block. So basically the toes and the distal transverse arch. And then come up and down. Lifting to the tippy toes. I hope you can see this. My block is so much like this. Maybe that's better. Is that better? Yeah. And then drop the heel as low as you can go. So below, hopefully, the surface or the top of this block. You can do this on a stair step. Or on a curb. You just need a lift under the foot because you're dropping the heel lower than the toe on the downward motion. And then go ahead and switch sides. And as you're switching sides, just sort of notice what that leg that you lifted and lowered feels like. What you're noticing in the toes. And then do the same on the other foot, and just notice if one foot is easier than the other. So I didn't say it, but obviously the other foot just floats in the air. If that's not accessible for your clients, you could also, give some support under that leg. I don't quite know how well you can do that. And then let that movement stop and tune into the backs of the legs for a moment. Tune into the feet and just take a look at your feet now as compared to, let's say 20 minutes ago, and you might have different coloring in your feet now. Mine are definitely a little bit more pink, so there's definitely more blood flow happening right now. All right, and then find your wall again. You probably don't have to have a mat for this, so you don't have to schlep props around if you don't want to. And step the right foot forward so the toes are curled up. So they're plantar flexed, and the bottoms of the toes are facing or are propped against the wall, and the rest of the foot is planted. Your hands will both be at the wall, and you'll face the wall. I'm looking at you just so I can see what's happening, and so you can hear me. Your stride length, you can decide as we go along what that should be. We prepared for this movement with our toe lifts, and so we'll start here by bending just the forward knee and let it come all the way to the wall. If you can, you don't have to. If the wall's too far away, you can always bring a block between the wall and the knee to make that distance a little bit shorter. To support you better so that you're not forcing a stretch into the left leg. That's just not there. So a block between the knee and the wall is a great way to bring the right distance there. You might want to rest your forearms to the wall and then feel the stretch in the left leg. Notice whether your heel is on the floor or lifted. And just play with the placement of the back foot to see if there's any point where the heel can reach the floor. If there's not, that's not tragic. It's just an exploration. And try to feel very consciously what all is being stretched back here. And then go ahead and bend the left knee. And just see if this stretch is now in a slightly different place. Now, for one thing, you're lifting your heel now, but you've also taken the knee out of the equation. So you've taken out the muscles, the stretch in the muscles that cross both the ankle and the knee, specifically the gastrocnemius. And so just notice how that changes the stretch in the back of the leg. And then straighten the leg, press yourself away from the wall. You can actually keep the hands at the wall if you want to, and step the right foot back, left foot forward. Again, plantar flexing the left toes, bringing the toes to the wall, foot to the ground. And start by having the full stretch with the leg in the back or the knee in the back extended. And then bending the left knee until it either meets the wall or a block. And noticing how that deepens the stretch in the back leg. Notice whether the heel popped up off the ground. Notice if you have side-to-side differences. I am way tighter in my right leg, I'm noticing right now, than in my left. And then bend the right knee. And notice how this changes the stretch in the back of the right leg. And then straighten the back knee, straighten the forward knee, and step out of the stretch. And then just sort of shake it out. I will take a couple more ankle circles, this time standing. Do circles one direction and then circles in the other direction, and then switch feet just to release any strain that crept into the ankle during the wall stretch. And then you might choose to be at a wall here to touch something, or you can stand on the middle of your mat. Or I invite you to flex at the hip joint, flex at the knee, and grab your knee with your hand. And then dorsiflex and plantar flex the foot a few times. So drawing the toes up and then pointing the toes down. And maybe notice in this moment how amazing it is that you could lift your right leg without your right hip just dropping to the floor. And sort of have a conscious appreciation of, oh yeah, there are probably some muscles here that are holding me up right now, even though my leg is lifted. And then you might add some flexion and extension at the knee joint. And again, you can have your hand on something to stabilize yourself. And then add some rotation to the hip joint, bringing the leg out and in, and out and in. Maybe noticing how much range of motion you have in terms of moving the femur side to side in the hip socket. Keep the knee bent, keep the ankle in its natural shape, and then draw the leg behind you, extending the hip. And then draw back through to the front. And we'll do that one more time. and step it down and switch sides. So start by lifting the left leg, bending at the knee, bending at the hip, and holding on to that knee. You can do it with one hand and have one hand on a surface, or you can use both hands and dorsey and plantar flex the foot. And then maybe do that without holding so that you're not using the arms to support the leg here, and start flexing and extending the knee. And then using one hand to help move the thigh bone, the femur bone in the hip socket. Not really your hand that's doing the work here. These are your external hip rotators in action. And then bring the leg out behind you. Again, you can hold on to something if you would like. And bring it back in front and behind. One more time. And step it down and jog it out a little bit. Shake it out a little bit. And then step to the front of your mat. If you left your mat, inhale your arms up. Exhale them down, fold. You can have your blocks, or you can use your shins. Take a breath in this half lift or in forward fold, wherever you are. With your next exhalation, release the hands to the ground. You might need to bend the knees to do that. That's totally fine, whatever serves you in this moment. And then step the right foot back, step the left foot back, and come into a down dog, or you can come into a dolphin on your forearms, your choice. And make dolphin sort of your assessment pose. We could have started our practice, with dolphin or with down dog, but you have a sense of how your body typically feels in this pose, and just sense into your ankles, your legs, and notice if anything is different for you. No expectations, no particular outcome, just notice. And then walk the feet halfway up the mat. Bring them as wide apart as the mat. Walk the hands back to the feet. And then once again, come into a squat. Once again, as in, we did this yesterday. And then yogi's choice, you can have your palms together and touch the thumbs to the sternum if that works for your body. Press the elbows into the knees, knees into the elbows. If that doesn't work for you, you can always open the arms out and create that isometric movement between the knees and the elbows this way. And of course, you could have a block under each hand for stabilization. You could also have a block under the seat. So there are nice variations to the squat that make it accessible. And then just take a look at your feet here and notice how your feet assembled themselves. See what kind of an angle they have. And yeah, just notice that with some curiosity. And then bring the hands either on a block or on the floor and lift yourself back up to standing. Turn the feet in, walk them together, and stand in mountain pose. Now, standing in mountain pose, you'll have to be your own teacher now. If you were the teacher, you would take a quick look around the room and you would look at what is happening to your students' knees here. So you'll have to fold forward just a little bit to see your own knees, to notice anything. And as you look at your knees, also look at your feet. And make a mental note so we can talk about this later. And then walk the feet wide again. Come to your spot. And then touch your bum down any way that you want to. Find a comfortable seat. Rest your hands wherever they want to rest, on your legs, in your lap, by your heart. Cast your eyes down or even close them. And let your attention sweep through your body from the toes through the middle of the foot, the back of the foot, through the ankles, your shins, your calves, your knees, your thighs, your hips, entire pelvic girdle, the lower abdomen, the midsection of the torso, the rib basket, the shoulder girdle, the upper arms, the elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, fingers, the base of the neck, the center of the head, your face, the back of the neck, and down the back side of the torso. Invite your entire physical being to soften. Invite the breath to soften. Invite the mind to soften. And using whatever hand position you would like, bow your head to your heart. Take a couple rounds of breath. And thank you for sharing this practice. welcome back.